Hello, welcome to Old Nerd Reads His Marvel Comics in Order. This is episode 121. This time I read Marvel Team Up, number 56, the April 1977 issue. My copy is pretty nice. Not a whole lot of ticks. The pages are a little yellowed. It's a little flimsy. But otherwise, it's pretty nice. I would say this is probably very fine minus, if not very fine. Definitely keeping it in my collection. This is the last Bill Mantlo written issue. We've got the old creative team of Bill Mantlo, Sal Buscema, Dave Hunt here. And like I said, Bill Mantlo's final issue. We've got Spidey and Daredevil teaming up against Electro, and as you can see on page 1, Blizzard, who we just recently saw in Iron Man. I want to say a few episodes ago of Old Nerd Reads His Marvel Comics in Order, there was a couple issues of Iron Man that were the earliest ones in my collection, and I'll put a link up here on the top of the video screen here, so you can go check that out if you feel like it. But the Blizzard, I believe, Blizzard fought Iron Man in a 2-issue story, and I believe that was written by Bill Mantlo as well. So we have this guy's got to be dead. If he's frozen that solid, I would assume Blizzard has murdered this delivery truck driver. This is a Daily Bugle delivery truck, so the Blizzard is trying to stop delivery of the Daily Bugle. Oh, and we get a little bit of a tease of one of the big MacGuffins in this story, which happens a little later on. I'll point it out when we get to it. Something I did this time around, which I usually do at the end, but this time I decided I'd read the letters page first. I mean, the letters are always talking about a couple issues back, so why not read that first before you start reading the actual comic, right? And there were 2 interesting letters in this issue. But first of all, there was an announcement from editorial. I guess in the prior issue of Marvel Team Up, in issue 55, they answered letters ahead of time. They were ahead of schedule by a month. So the letters in this issue are talking about the issue. It's confusing, but they messed up. Like that, I think that's just kind of an example of where the Marvel bullpen was in the mid-late 70s before Jim Shooter took over and got all the trains running on time. They were just kind of all over the place, chasing their tail, and kind of comics weren't coming out on time, and mistakes like this would happen. That's just me guessing. I don't know, but it just sounds like it. But anyway, 2 letters in here were very interesting. This first one is talking about Marvel Team Up 50, 51, 52, the Gene D. Wolfe Wraith story, where we had guest stars like Iron Man, Doctor Strange. Was there someone else? Can't remember. But they talk about the psychic judges that show up in the last page of issue 52. And this reader points out that it triggered a memory of something, of a story he'd read earlier. And he went in his library and figured out in a book, a science fiction anthology book called Orbit 4. I have to look that up. But in Orbit 4, there was a story by an author named Charles Harness, and the story was called Probable Cause, in which a future Supreme Court must deliberate on the admissibility of psychic evidence, and in which several of the justices have themselves such powers. Some coincidence, huh? And he says, if this ain't worth a no prize, I don't know what is. And the response was pretty neat, because very special thanks to Charles Harness, without whom this tale could never have been written. So Bill Mantlo had read that story, but he couldn't remember the story or where he'd read it. He just had the idea, and he couldn't remember. So since this reader wrote the letter and sent it into the bullpen, that reminded Bill Mantlo of where he had read the story. And so he thanks this this reader for reminding him so he could go back and enjoy that story again from when he was younger. So I thought that was kind of neat. And another thing here, and this has been an ongoing thing, especially in the Spider-Man titles. This reader, his letter talks about how the Spider-Man of Marvel Team Up does not feel like the Spider-Man who's in the Amazing Spider-Man title. And where does it say it in here? All too often, I don't get enough of the feeling that this is the real Spider-Man, or at least not the same one that appears in the Spider-Man book. And he means Amazing Spider-Man, because that's all there was at the time other than Marvel Team Up for Spider-Man. So that's been kind of an ongoing thing in the letters pages I've found, especially during this video series I'm doing, reading my Marvel comics in order, reading the letters pages. A lot of people complain that the Marvel Universe doesn't feel like a cohesive unit. Like, it doesn't feel like it all happens in the same universe. And that's basically what this guy is complaining about, that the Marvel Team Up Spider-Man does not feel like the Spider-Man that appears in the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man. And I would agree. Especially this issue kind of points it out pretty well. The Daredevil characterization, I feel, is kind of cartoony. He's cracking jokes. He almost seems like he might as well be, he might as well be Spider-Man, because he's punching bad guys and cracking jokes while he's doing it. And of course, Spider-Man does that as well. So I mean, and I realize this is an earlier incarnation of Daredevil. This is pre-Frank Miller Daredevil, and that kind of, I would say that Frank Miller's run on Daredevil kind of solidified the character for even until today. And so possibly prior to Frank Miller, in the pages of the Daredevil comic, maybe he was a little bit more Spider-Man-like, cracking jokes and whatnot. But I don't have any of those issues, so I couldn't tell you. But yeah, things like that. I would say that this Marvel team up, especially with Sal Buscema's, we've talked about how Sal Buscema's pencils can either be really detailed, but more often than not, since he's drawing so many comics a month, he's putting out so much material a month, he keeps his panels very sparse, like not really much of a background. And you see that a lot, especially in this issue. You see not a lot of detail, just the primary action, the primary characters, and any props that they need to get the story across to the reader. One of the biggest examples of Sal Buscema being able to draw quite well was the first issue of the Spectacular Spider-Man. You can tell that he put a lot of work into that issue. There's a lot of detail, but more often than not, since he was working so hard and drawing so many comics a month, he left it kind of sparse. And this issue is definitely this issue is definitely more sparse than that. And all those things combined, I kind of agree with that letter, that this Spider-Man does not feel like the Spider-Man that we see in the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man. That book seems very serious, more adult. This seems more like Batman the Animated Series comic book version of Batman. Marvel Team Up would be kind of the same kind of feel for Spidey as Batman the Animated Series, the comic book that they put out to go along with that that cartoon. I just feel like this has a younger reader vibe. And I think that's probably what that reader was picking up on, who wrote the letter. So, and this is Bill Mantelow's final issue. Next issue is going to be Chris Claremont taking over. So I'm curious to see if they start tying it more into the Spider-Man universe. A lot of the letters and bullpen bulletins and and whatnot have been talking about Chris Claremont coming onto this title, and about how he, Archie Goodwin, and is it Len Wein who's writing Amazing Spider-Man right now, all have been getting together and talking about the future of Spider-Man. So I'm assuming it's going to get more cohesive after this. Between the three main titles, Marvel Team Up, Amazing Spider-Man, and Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. We shall see, though. We shall see. But like I said, we open with Blizzard basically murdering a delivery truck driver so that he can't deliver the newspaper. We don't know why, but Daredevil, his tactile awareness alerted him to a temperature change, and now his radar sense is pinpointing the cause of it, and it's a guy with a heartbeat and a pulse so slow he shouldn't be alive, and of course that's Blizzard. So they have a little fight, but Blizzard is able to escape, and here we see, again, help is on the way, Black says, but mail strike continues. This is the headline on this issue of the Daily Bugle, that the Blizzard doesn't want delivered to newsstands for some reason. So pay attention to that, because it's going to come into play later. So he decides he needs to get to the Daily Bugle, Daredevil does. Meanwhile, Peter Parker's already there. And we find out that Gloria Grant, who is now secretary at the Bugle, she had just gotten a job there in the pages of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. I think Peter Parker talked to Jonah Jameson and introduced Gloria to him so that she could have a job. I guess she was having a hard time getting modeling work, I think is the reason that Pete helped her get the job here at the Bugle. But anyway, she's there now. She called Pete and told him not to come into the office today, even though it's payday and Pete's always poor and behind on the rent for his apartment. He's still coming in to find out why. And he gets in there, and there's all these thugs in the office. And Gloria says, I told you you weren't supposed to come in. And then Pete hears a ruckus in Robbie Robertson's office, and the goons toss him aside. And he's got to remember that he's Spider-Man. He has super strength, and he doesn't want to blow his secret identity. They tell him to head down the hall to an office down the hall where everybody's being held. All the Bugle personnel are being held until their business is taken care of here at the Bugle. And well, just luckily it happens to be a dark hall and nobody's in it. There's no exit, so they trust him to walk down the hall and basically jail himself. And on the way down the hall, he's, it's a dark hall. There's Jonah's office. There's something going on in there. And he decides to jump up on the wall and look through the transom. Transom. I didn't know what a transom was. I had to look that up. It's a transom window. So a transom is a bar across the top of the door in a house or a building. I didn't know that. Now I do. See, comic books teach you a lot. So he peeks into Jonah's office through the transom. And we've got Electro and the Blizzard in there holding Jonah hostage. They're going to, they're just basically going to shake him down like a mobster does. You got to pay us, or you're not going to be allowed to stay in business, basically. Or we'll take you out and put somebody in who will work with us. They also bring in this publisher of J. Jonah Jameson's competitor newspaper, The Globe. And that just provides comic relief. So these two hate each other and they start fighting, which ticks off Electro, tells him to shut up. But here we get to see the MacGuffin. Help is on the way, Black says, but mail strike continues. And we find out that it was an SOS, help, blackmail. So J. Jonah Jameson published that headline, even though there was no mail strike and no congressman named Black. So it was obviously an attempt at getting help from the police or the FBI or something. But it didn't work. He got caught. I thought this was kind of funny. Apparently, just by pure coincidence, Blizzard was in a cell in jail prior to this. In a cell right next to a cell with Electro. So Electro, while he was in jail, and both of them were working on their super suits at the same time, in jail, no less. And apparently, just as the Blizzard was getting his suit done in his jail cell. Coincidentally, in the jail cell next to him, Electro is also getting his electric powers back, and there's an explosion, and it frees them both. So now they're partners. I thought that was quite a coincidence. But anyway, Daredevil busts in and immediately kicks Electro right into the desk. That had to hurt. But I like Daredevil's announcement here. Allow me to announce the end of Mad Supervillain Scheme number 20,471. Again, it seems more cartoony. It does not seem like Daredevil. I don't think Daredevil would say something like that, at least today. Maybe he did back in the 70s, but yeah, this just seems more, doesn't quite fit in with the Amazing Spider-Man. It's very light, more younger reader focused, I would say. But anyway, that gives Peter Parker the chance to change into his costume. He's halfway. He's got his pants down around his ankles, and he's fighting already. But they're able to team up, and the two editors, newspaper editors, Jonah and the Globe editor, now they're going to team up as well. And it is funny. This is a fun issue. I'm not complaining about the younger aspect, the younger reader aspect of it at all, because this was a very fun issue. Between Electro, like that's great, Sal Buscema Electro, it's just, kind of funny, corny, cartoony, not very serious, but still fun. Jonah and the city editor are going to sneak up behind Electro and Blizzard and whack them over the head with chairs, and they end up hitting the chairs together. But Spider-Man and Daredevil are there, and they're able to take care of it themselves. And it just kind of wraps up. The good guys win, of course, and the Blizzard ends up freezing himself. Electro gets a double punch. This is classic Sal Buscema right here. Daredevil and Spidey both punching Electro, and Electro going backwards. That's you see that in just about every issue Sal Buscema draws. Somebody gets punched backwards like that. Electro just happens to be the guy to take the lumps this issue. He gets smacked back into the printing press, bounces off that, hits the wall, and he's done. And that's the end. And yeah, it's a quick wrap up to the action, but it was a fun story. I know that people were complaining about how this Spidey doesn't feel the same. I get it. I know what they're talking about. And it's fine. I mean, maybe Marvel Team Up was supposed to be that way. I don't really know. Maybe it was aimed at younger readers, while The Amazing Spider-Man was aimed at a more mature audience. Stan Lee was always constantly going around at this time to do lectures at colleges, and he had quite a good audience at colleges. Like a lot of college kids were reading Marvel comics, so maybe that was the plan. This is for the younger readers. Amazing Spider-Man's for the college kids. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, this final Bill Mantlo issue, and here's the next issue. We've got the Black Widow and the Silver Samurai. And the Silver Samurai must have been one of Chris Claremont's favorite villains, because he gets used again in the pages of the X-Men in a few years. And he'll pop up here and there. But this is the first Chris Claremont issue. And that'll be the next time we read Marvel Team Up. In this video series of mine, Old Nerd reads his Marvel comics in order. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like. If I said anything about it that you have something to chime in on about, please comment. If you know any other old nerds like us who are in love with their old Bronze Age comic book collection, go ahead and share it with them. That'd help me out. And stick around for more. I'm just getting started. I'm in the year 1977, and I've got a lot of comics to read as I read my Marvel comics in order. Stick around for more. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.